But I met a friend in this last year, 2 years, who is Baha'i. And I've actually studied with Baha'is when I lived in San Francisco 20 years ago. So I know a fair amount of the faith. Anyway, one of the comments she said to me is, I'm nurturing my female relationships. And it struck me that nurturing relationships is really, really, really important. And so I look for that in people, and I look to nourish the relationships I have. And I've gotten disconnected and distant from people that aren't in a two-way relationship with me. And I grieve that, but I have to let it go because I'm nurturing the ones that do feed me.
And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world.
I am just firing up the recorder for this particular session, as I did last session, and all the Saturday sessions here for Living Resilience and our Islands of Sanity in a Mad World course. And this is the live part where we're on Zoom together. Oh, okay. We're live here because we get together on the first and third Saturdays of each month, and that'll keep going at least until September 2025. Originally designed it to be a year-long course. And who knows how long it will go. It seems like there's no shortage of need and desire for safe and nourishing circles or environments where we can come together to help make sense of these bizarre times that we are living in. So that is, let me see, and this, if I haven't said it already, this is the second of two sessions today on Saturday, September 15th. And this is the one that is scheduled to go from 10:30 in the morning Pacific time to 11:30. And I think that's all that needs to be introduced. I want to make sure folks know, I believe it's Kay and Eric that are joining us, one from Ashland, Oregon, I'm sure just down the street from me somewhere, and Eric from elsewhere in Canada. And Eric and Kay, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you both to just check in very, very briefly, tell us a little bit about what has you be here, and maybe just a little bit about how you're doing where you are, because for a few locations, that's a big deal right now. So would either of you like to just check in briefly?
Okay. I've been watching collapse, and well, for quite a few years. Mostly I would say probably on the sort of environment, just watching what was happening with the patterns in the world, and they're just getting wonkier and wonkier, and we're responsible for tipping the flywheels in weird directions. I was involved with, well, I guess I still am, in environmental movements. And I started to say, I think we really need to start dealing with environmental grief.
Mhm. Mhm.
And nobody wanted to go there. They don't want to be pessimistic. And at that point, I was really starting to see that it was actually crucial that we start, particularly on this continent, and metabolizing the grief and figuring that out.
Yeah.
But that's really not on the curriculum at the moment in terms of what we need to know as beings on this planet is we're not separate. Only took me about 70 years to understand what that really meant. I mean, people keep saying, "Well, we need to reconnect with nature." What is that? What does that actually mean? How do you embrace entanglement that your culture has told you you're not supposed to? That's woo-woo stuff. So at the moment, I'm kind of I live in two worlds, a culture that's deeply ingrained in me and exploring the other than human in a very active way. I'm associated with Dougal Hine and his school called Home.
Mhm.
I'm a regular sort of member of the long table there.
Very good.
So I'll just sort of finish. Our recent discussions, we deal with uncertainty on a continual basis, but it's just ramped up big time, particularly for those of you living in the U.S. But I was born in Broxton, Ontario, right on the St. Lawrence, and spent a lot of time in northern New York. So I look with astonishment and just trying to figure out what the hell is underneath all that. Anyway, so that's sort of where I'm at.
Right. Eric, thank you and welcome. Kay, would you like to check in a little bit?
Yeah, I just realized my Zoom starts at 11, so I'll stay here and I'll try that Zoom, and if it doesn't work again, I'll come back. But my check-in is, and I've only been here once, well, twice before, but once recently, and I like the space you're holding, and I think grieving is really indicated. I actually have been an environmental activist since I was in high school, and I was going to a Unitarian Universalist church in like 2012, 2013, and I read this article about grieving the environmental losses, and I gave it to the minister, and I never heard anything. So I've known about the need, and I went into a huge crisis when Kavanaugh was being appointed because he supported torture, and I'm a Quaker, and it just sent me into a tailspin. So that was my existential crisis, and I took a month of almost complete silence. And so now I actually find myself in very almost positive spaces. My Quaker meeting is being very life affirming, and I actually get a lot of joy by going there and sharing and hearing other messages of hope and resilience, and all because things are going bad doesn't mean we can let despair take over. It's like honor the despair, but keep dancing was one of the messages last week.
Beautiful. Well, nothing personal here, but I hope your other Zoom meeting doesn't happen. But we will understand when you have to step away. And thank you both for checking in. I appreciate it. And I think others may agree with me on this, that just with what we both checked in with, it feels like you both are a pretty good fit for where we are right now. We've just had a lovely, lovely first session half hour ago or more now. And so we're shifting gears to peruse a slightly different landscape. We started in last hour with exploring what are some of the larger issues in our world, and that larger can mean anything from, including your neighborhood instead of just your home and your intimate relationship and so on. And it can go all the way out to national and global. And so we actually went that full range in that hour. And so what I'd like to invite us to explore now, and I'm gonna put it out as a choice point again, slightly different choice point. I have the more structured version of this conversation in which you would be paired up with another person. You would go to a breakout room. You'd have a set of prompts or questions, if you will, that one person would share and the other person would listen, and there'd be some reflective listening about what that person is sharing. And so that's the more structured version. And the less structured version, which we chose last time and is fully available this time if you'd like. And what the topic I would suggest is relationship in these times. And I'm speaking, to be somewhat selfish in creating this particular topic for us to explore. This has been an item of considerable interest for me for a number of years now. It was already pretty well in place and disturbing before we all started to use the words cancel culture. The idea of being able to, in an instant, lose a relationship, break a relationship, or have a relationship broken with us in a moment. And that could be a lifetime relationship. It could be an in-family relationship, literally lifetime. It could be a friend of a few years. It could be a lover. It could be a spouse. And I've always found that to be one of the most disturbing elements of this time. And I'm going to be a bit vulnerable with you now because I'm sure there's some percentage of me that would like to look competent and like to look like a good facilitator and like I've got my shit together and whatever. And I'm going to tell you that right now I find myself at a very low point of understanding or pretending to understand what it takes to constitute, to actually form and co-create a relationship that has, I'm going to bump around a little bit here, and I hope this is not too disturbing or unwieldy, that I would call these elements of soul, like a relationship that has soul elements are things that AI and social media just can't come close to. They're the things that we just know when we're present to them. That dear, dear friend or our spouse or our dog or our loved ones. We know when we've got that relationship. And my skin is tingling right now just as I'm describing it to you. So I'm assuming that all of us have some amount of that present in our lives, and isn't it most isn't that one of the most precious things about being a human being? So it's what I'm asking if you would like to do the more structured, reflective listening. And I think there's tremendous value in that. Remember, I mentioned that Janet really took us, in that direction last hour, and we were taking the informal route. So, so it's pretty cool. And we could also do the more random popcorn sharing, which, as I now know this group, I trust we will go far and deep. And so that to be a bit more concise with the, I don't know, topic name or something is, uh, have you experienced this kind of relationship breakage or a strain? It doesn't have to necessarily be completely broken, but a strain that might start to look like it might never fully repair. You're still in touch and you still have some connection, but it's not quite as fully open as you might hope. And I'm looking forward to, if assuming we choose this and we move right through, is that you will also please bring your words for this. How does this live for you? Is this something that's actually real in your experience? A part of what modernity has brought us now and we brought ourselves? And if so, how real is it in your experience? And I would ask that you please only share that which is comfortable for you to share with this circle. Um, I know for me it can be really very, very vulnerable, and I have much grief about some of the relationships I've lost over the past few years. So please take care of yourself, and please share as much as you would like to, with those beautiful open hearts. Um, so could I see hands for basically doing it how we just did it, popcorn style? Please, I think that was the majority.
And
So, yeah.
and Dean, I will leave, but I remember the last time I kind of shared some hope. And so I want to go first because if I leave, I won't be able to share my hope. But I met a friend in this last year, 2 years, who is Baha'i, and I've actually studied with Baha'is when I lived in San Francisco 20 years ago. So I know a fair amount of the faith. Anyway, one of the comments she said to me is, I'm nurturing my female relationships. And it struck me that nurturing relationships is really, really, really important. And so I look for that in people, and I look to nourish the relationships I have. And I've gotten disconnected and distant from people that aren't in a two-way relationship with me. And I grieve that, but I have to let it go because I'm nurturing the ones that do feed me.
Yes. Yes, beautiful. I I just can't imagine a more important thing for us to be doing. It just happens to be my stance also. Okay, and so thank you so much for pointing at that. And are we going to lose you soon? Oh, it was top of the hour that you're leaving. Okay, good. All right. So again, thanks. And you're muted, by the way. Okay.
I
Yeah.
I would love to speak to that, and I appreciate you bringing up this topic, Dean. It's super important, I think. And I shared in the last meeting, like I'm feeling this sense of grief, of loneliness, of losing friends close to me. I'm in proximity, I mean. And so I've been feeling it in a lot of ways and trying to rebuild sort of a community. But one of the things that, and this is just bit of hopefulness also. I've been reading this. It's going to sound funny, but I've been reading a book by Mel Robbins, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mel Robbins, but I um, used to kind of like, oh, I don't know, poo poo some of the stuff that she said for one reason or another. But I love this new book that she wrote called The Let Them Theory, and I'm getting a lot of solace out of it. But one of the things, she spends a good chapter on friendships, and I found it so useful. And and I hadn't thought about friendships in the way in which she um, talked about it. But one of the things that Kay, you said that I think I also heard from Mel Robbins that I think is just so necessary for me to hear, which is relationships require a lot of work. And you really have to put in the relation in that work. One of the things that Mel Robbins also said, which was useful for me, is that when they mine have often just faded away. I'll have people move away and then I lose touch. And I'm not a little bit of an introvert, so I'm not a big reacher outer kind of person. And so then I'll start questioning, is this a safe relationship for me to bring my kind of wild and crazy ideas into? And you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But what Mel Robbins said, and which I is really useful for me to take to heart, is it's not personal. When these relationships start to fade, or even if they break off suddenly because there's this difference of opinion or whatever, that it's not personal. And that very often, and I've heard this neuroscience research say this too, very often, even when it may feel on your end like you're being ghosted because they didn't respond or whatever, it may not be the case. It may be that there was just something else going on in their lives at the time. We have so much coming in information all the time, and things we have to deal with. My friend's fire in LA means we didn't get to meet, but what I'm trying to say with this is that it's not personal, and sometimes you can pick up relationships where they left off even 10, 20, 40 years. I'm actually thinking a lot about a friend I made when I was a college student, and she and I have, so I've been just noticed her on Facebook, and I'm like, man, we could be friends again. And I kind of feel like there would be an opening to recreate that friendship, and it would be just me reaching out to her. And so that Mel Robbins is like, it's just work. You just have to do the work. You just reach out with your heart open, with your own vulnerability, and not be afraid. And I think that
Yes.
that's been helpful for me, to know that, yeah, I just need to nurture those friendships that I care about, and that's super important right now. Like, that feels so really important right now. Anyway, so thank you for your share, Kay. I'm complete.
Thank you.
I could speak to that. I have a lifelong pattern which I am actively working on breaking, where I sort of will procrastinate on a relationship, and then I get into what I just kind of have called it. It's like paralyzing remorse. And like in this, I know my daughters, my partner, like, nourish relationships. So this Valentine's Day, I just kind of did a kind of a survey of people I know in terms of just how my heart reacts. So I have a list of people that are going to get a phone call, and as you say, you have to just put your heart out there, but also. Um, I'm fairly convinced. Well, I can say fairly good. I'm convinced now I can deal with that. But there are these. They're like gateways. It's like to. Um, so it's a recovery process. Um, you know, and I'm still beginning to understand some of my childhood trauma. And I also know is that as I expand my relationship to the other than human, it does really move the human relationships along as well, and or in terms of how I see myself in relation to them. So that's what comes up for me right now.
Thank you. Is there anyone who's experienced the breaking of a relationship in this way? Yeah, please. Anybody who might like to share, please do. Richard, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to bring up a kind of curious situation which arose with a friend of mine who I thought was a good friend, a male friend, here in the Austin area. That's why I am near Austin, Texas. But and it's not related to the climate crisis or any of these collapse crises, although maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, he started smoking a lot of marijuana, and it was weird because he kind of retreated into this drugged world. I don't know how to put it, but anyway, I'm not against drug use or anything like that. I don't care whether people use drugs or not. But in his case, he like really got sucked in and really got addicted to it. And, he thought he was like finding all these incredible mysteries of the universe and kind of seeing the way through to understanding all these things. And in the meantime, he got more and more distant and more unavailable. And, it's really painful to watch that happen and feel that happening because my friend sort of disappeared. I mean, he just vanished into this marijuana haze somehow. And then last year he moved, I think it was last year, he moved from this area up to Colorado. And we said we were going to get in touch and, communicate, and we have not. And that's just as much my fault as his. But I have to say, I feel, I really feel sad about it because, he kind of just vanished. Even while he was here, he vanished, and then he did literally move away. But it's very, very painful to see somebody go through something like that and not be able to do a damn thing about it because he was totally convinced that he was on this really cool path. And still not sure how I'm going to, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to, reconnect with him or not, or try to. I'm a little reluctant because I feel like he's still stuck on that path, and I don't know. That's a painful one. But when people, it wasn't even a drug addiction in a sense. Well, maybe it was. Maybe he was really addicted to marijuana, but he was certainly addicted to this alternate space that he'd get into when he was smoking, and that kept him away from other people. I mean, I know he withdrew from a lot of people. So it's weird, very painful.
Yeah.
That's the thing that comes to mind for me in terms of losing a formerly close relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. I want to remind people if you ever want to share next, or you want to share and be seen, you're welcome to use the little automatic hand down at the bottom of your screen, your Zoom screen. And I'd like to just add my recent episode of at this point just strained relationship. And I'd also like to introduce, for those who are kind of new to this work, a lot of how we've set up this living resilience curriculum for the courses is we've started with a man named Canadian, by the way, Paul Chafurka, who wrote an essay years ago called The Stages of Awareness. Very simple layout, going from clueless, he calls it dead asleep, in the business as usual paradigm, which is where all of us have been saturated since birth, and most of us live in every day and do the best we can to get our nose above water. And in the 4 or 5 steps that he lays out, one becomes more and more systems aware, more and more aware of our integral beingness, interbeing with the web of life. So as you go up the stages, there's more and more of that awareness. And what we try to do here in Living Resilience is to offer up a number of practices and a number of resources for each of those steps. They're not the only thing in town. They just happen to be the menu that we've offered here, and participants and so on keep bringing more and more practices and ideas, resources to each of those levels. And long story short, about this very good friend, been friends for a few years, and we have so much in common, a number of different shamanic and energetic practices that we both are familiar with and have integrated into our own practices and lives, and a lot to love about the connection that we can have and all that. And quite recently, I am, by the way, really not very fond of any part of the political system in the USA. I'm not no longer left or right. It just seems like a mess. And so it's not at all a factional thing for me. But I'd like to introduce another component of this work is sometimes we'll talk about how what got us into this predicament is that we've either forfeited or lost our center. That's on the individual level. That's that kind of home base feeling, that feeling of when you're fully self-regulated, you're fully at home in your body and your relationships and life. That's the kind of center I'm talking about, not just the physical center. And we also like to assert that there are a number, hi Kay,
Hi.
there are a number of other aspects of us inside this body that actually is worthy of being called.
Hmm? Yeah.
Can you
There you
hear
go.
me? No.
I'm just muting Kay there. So
You're still there with us, Gay.
So there are, what I'm asserting is that not only is there that general sense of home within our bodies, within our experience, but there's also, it's worthy to speak about different aspects of ourselves as also a kind of body within the body. Let me tell you, instead of just making it odd sounding words, there's the feeling body. You've heard me say those words a few times in the earlier hour and this one. And so that's having a more and more full relationship with our feelings as they occur in our body, feelings and emotions. And the one I'd like to mention right now is the mental body. And the main phrase that I use for center in that is sense making. How do you make sense of this world? And the only place that that can really happen is in our thinking, in our mind, in our, excuse me, mental body. And why I'm giving you all of this is that it will be more and more relevant as each month's curriculum goes by. But for me, and losing, I don't know, not losing yet, but pretty much stunting my relationship with this dear friend is that I have no idea how to make sense of how he processes the world now, which is different than it was 2 years ago, and how I process the world, how I think about the world, how I make sense of this psychedelic rodeo that we all keep talking about, especially in the U.S. But I see us as a global self-terminating culture. He's really taken on kind of a standard right-wing Trump all the way kind of situation. And I feel helpless because I have no idea how to connect. And I don't want to make him wrong and me right. It's not a righteousness thing at all. I just literally it feels like quicksand between me and him 100 yards away. I have no idea how to respond to certain elements of what he'll share about his orientation, where he deploys his attention now. And it's almost like that expression, there's no there for me compared to what I'm used to. So this might not be that kind of brutal cancel culture, break the relationship, shred it, it's gone forever. It's not that. But I feel helpless, and I think it feels like right now he speaks one language, I speak another, and we both only speak 3 or 4 words of each other's language. And so it's a stunted and greatly reduced feeling of relatedness. And I have grief about that because kind of the bigger picture of this in creating this curriculum and being as deeply involved as I have been in how to create curriculum that speaks to people at a number of different levels, I feel less capable and less like I understand what's going on than I have really in the entire 10 years that I've been doing this. It's extraordinarily humbling, and I feel I guess this is partly a call out for not just today, and I don't need to make me or this story the center of today, but I'm in a circle like this. And one of the major reasons I'm in right now is to get feedback from all of y'all, which you've been doing so beautifully, is what are the resources we can call on for better sense making? What are the resources we can call on for a more full and available presence as I relate with others in my world, and so on? So I hope that communicates, and there's really no punchline beyond that, except that's something I very much appreciate about this circle. And Richard, thanks for waiting.
Sure. Take my hand down here. Wait a minute.
I'll get it.
Okay. Yeah. In terms of relationship, what's just coming to me is that there's like a spectrum of it's really how we relate to the world, and that includes other people. But there are people who are very hateful and exclusive on one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum is people who are more inclusive and embracing and open. And there's an incredible variation, between those two extremes. And somehow, I mean, of course, I'm drawn to the people mainly who are more inclusive and expansive and open-minded and all that. And yet, there are a lot of people in the world, especially right now, and I have to say, I think a lot of them are being influenced by right-wing media and, very hateful messaging. Those people are really lost because, like I was talking about earlier, they're kind of trapped in their lower mind or their survival brain or whatever we want to call it. And, it just came to me, I mean, on some level, I don't want to hate them. You know, I don't want to fear them. I don't want to hate them. And I really feel like it's suddenly become real to me that they literally do not know what they're doing. Like Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they
Know
do.
what they do.
I think it's true. I mean,
I am on a Zoom
they don't know
call.
what they're doing. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I mean, it's hard to talk about, but something about that is kind of freeing. It's like, wow, maybe I can have compassion for them and not hate them. Or maybe I don't have to fear them. Maybe they're just stuck and they don't even know they're stuck. So there's something to this inclusive versus exclusive spectrum and, how we can relate to people on that spectrum. And that's a big challenge. But I'm really feeling that one and really thinking about it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
Beverly?
You calling Beverly?
I thought you were about to say something. Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm trying to get back to you actually. Because people are calling me and I'm getting text messages and
Oh,
they're important, unfortunately, and I had to respond to them.
uh,
So I have to get back, find out how I get back to you. Okay, I'm gonna go into my email and start all over again, I guess.
No, you got us.
yeah, we're
Yeah,
here.
I know, but I have no pictures, nothing. Like I'm
Oh,
looking at actually, I want to share. I'm looking in the face and in the eyes of my gorgeous companion for 16 years, Lily. She
Okay.
was my Shishan dog, Shih Tzu Bichon cross. And I don't think I've had a closer relationship with anyone, human, that I had with her. And she passed away from heart failure in July.
hmm.
And it put me into not right away because I was grieving too much. But then I turned my grief into an unhealthy obsession with getting another dog. Yeah, when I do get my puppy, it's going to be a wonderful therapy for me because um, I heard one gentleman say non-human relationships. Well, that's what I'm into. I'm into my squirrels that are around my apartment and I'm feeding them every day, although they're not eating when we've got so much snow. They're not eating, they're letting the peanuts get buried in the snow. But when the snow is over, I'll be continuing feeding the squirrels. So those are
Okay.
my relationships now. Animals of all kinds and getting a new puppy.
Great. Well, absolutely the best of luck with that. We've all got to get
Thank,
the relationship that best suits us.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
So
thank you.
I'd like to shift gears for us all in terms of we've got roughly 12 minutes left. And what I'd like to ask us to do is to start to check out, much like we checked in each of these sessions today. And if that could include something about what you're landing with. What are you landing with after our time together? What are some of the impressions that you've received and some of the things you were able to share? And so, approximately 2 minutes or so, or less, if you would please share whatever you would like to share to complete our time together, and also give us a sense of what you're leaving with.
I will just start with that. I am left with this sort of deep sense of appreciation at connecting with all of you all as a new part of my community, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that, but also a recognition that maybe part of what's been missing, because I kind of started with I'm kind of sad, but I think a little bit of what is missing, has been missing, is appreciation for that which I already have, and that's what's was very easily available to me if I would just take a little, create a little bit of energy and reach out with that open heart and be a little bit vulnerable, a little more vulnerable than I have been. And I think that one of the things I kind of realize is that there's such a, it's really interesting that who was talking, I think, I don't forget who was talking about, maybe it was you, Richard, about the friend that started smoking pot and sort of disappeared off your off your radar of connections just because he wasn't present. And it's really funny because just as I've been thinking about this whole polycrisis, metacrisis thing, like one of the things that is I've been like, oh God, I have a drawer where there's all of these pot, chewables, and wouldn't that be nice to just check out? And so there is this draw to just check out, right? Like, because it's just so painful. I just want to check out. And I have been resisting that. And one of the reasons is because checking out really does mean losing connection with the people that are important to me. And I'm not willing to check out because I want to make sure that I maintain those connections. And so I appreciate you sharing that story. It reminds me that I do sometimes check out in other ways too, that reduce the richness of relationships that I could otherwise have. So anyway, thank you. I feel a sense of hopefulness in this conversation, and I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Cindy.
I sort of have a sense of confirmation of some this decisions I'd made from here, sort of referring back to what Cindy was talking about initially, just put your heart out there. And I guess, Dean, it's like one of the sort of some of the work for me is really getting a sense of what my vital compass is. And it really is, because it's really hard to tell what's true these days. So it's like how this sense of discernment, that sort of, I'm starting to think of it as kind of guts and bones. There is stuff that just feels bone deep, and other things, but I pay a lot more attention to how I resonate with words in a bodily way. And that's relatively new, but I really do pay attention to it now. Yeah, so I'm just going away with some sort of sense of a deeper confirmation of who I am, where I'm headed. Thanks.
Welcome here, Eric. Welcome here.
Yeah, welcome.
I'll go. Um, I think I've been thinking about what Bob said earlier about it. I'm probably not quite getting this right. It'll be my own take on it, but if what's here is here, there's so many multiple things starting to crumble. And it was one thing to have an intellectual understanding of, oh, it's going to come apart. And now it feels like this is where I start to get tested about my ability to hold integrity and strength in the face of increasingly painful challenges. I don't think I was prepared for how much it was going to hurt. You know, I thought I had a handle on it, and I don't. So, yeah. So I'm very grateful for all of you for being here.
Yes.
It's like a truth-telling place. And, you know, as you're saying, it's so hard to know what's true now, that this feels like a truth-telling place, and that is so important. So thank you all.
Janet, are you on Facebook? Because I'd like to connect with you. We don't live that far from each other, and I really would like to connect with you. Be part of your community.
Yeah, my full name is on the screen.
I need to break
Yes.
in. We've got a couple people who need to check out before our time. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
if I could, Bob or who else?
Me.
Richard. Yeah.
Richard, thank you.
Well, okay, I was just saying I haven't checked out yet, but I'll check out, sure. Well, let's see. Huh. That's good, really good talk. I mean, it really touched me on a lot of different levels. Hmm. I always feel nourished by these meetings, and you know, it is like a truth-telling space. It's a you know, it's a safe space. It's a healing space, and I really appreciate that a lot. And yeah, even when we're talking about really horrible, you know, really painful stuff, I still come away with a warm feeling in my heart, which is interesting. You know, that's what I'm leaving
Yeah.
with. That's what I'm leaving with. Yeah.
All right. Richard, thank you. How about you, Bob? Would you like to check out?
Sorry about that.
There you are. Okay.
I don't have much that's coming to my mind right now. I appreciate everybody's today and their call and their sincerity, and hope to see y'all again here soon. So that's it for me right now. Thank you.
All right.
Hmm.
Well,
Thank
again,
you, Bob.
thank you everybody for two wonderful sessions today. And if anybody needs any help connecting with the course materials, which is on our not the website, but the Mighty Networks platform, that address is in every one of the Safe Circle invitations that you might have gotten. And that address is basically get you to add in your name and email address and become a member and go into the course materials for Islands of Sanity in a Mad World. I hope you will do that because I'm particularly thrilled to be adding material from a number of folks from Medium in the times to come, including Richard, and also a man named David Price, who is a remarkable muse and artist, and his words are quite extraordinary. And so I'd really like to invite you to the beauty and the sacred side that we touched into a number of times today. I'm in my experience, it's present in the course materials as well. So thank you so much. And Dr. Scholes, I hope you will consider my invitation to do some talking on a podcast about
Oh,
parents with adult children and so on. There's a whole lot I'd love to talk with you about. And to every one of us, thank you so much for bringing open hearts and willingness to participate at a deep level. Thank you. And Richard, I see you. I
yeah,
see your hand is up.
yeah, let me just add something real quick. Dean has mentioned this before, but I don't think he mentioned it in this group. On the website, there's a really remarkable video by this woman named Dia, what's her last name?
Dia Khan.
Dia Khan. Yeah, this filmmaker, Dia Khan, and I'm listening to this again, and it is one of the most remarkable podcasts I've ever heard. I mean, it's really incredible. This woman is like a sort of an embodiment of love and compassion, and he's really worth listening to. So I'm just putting that out there.
So if whoever needs to leave right now, please take care of yourself and we'll see you next time. And others, if you'll just stay for 2 minutes, I will give you all the information you need to contact that video that Richard's talking about. So I'm writing it in now.
Yeah.
She's a filmmaker who has chosen to make films about people who want to kill people like her.
Yeah.
She's one of the most courageous, compassionate, heartful people I have ever.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you put the link? Okay, that name is enough to go on.
Well, no, not really. Let me give you this part. This is the name of my YouTube channel podcast. So if you go to the Poetry of Predicament podcast on YouTube, and you then search within Poetry of Predicament for the name Dia Khan, which is just above it there in the chat, you will find it. And I've seen that at least 20 times, and it brings me to tears every time. She's an extraordinary exemplar. She's an extraordinary exemplar of what's possible in terms of compassion, in terms of being able to somehow relate with people that want to kill you. I've never seen anything like it. So thank you, Richard, for reminding very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for making it available.
You bet.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Blessings.
In my